Hi everyone, welcome to Pawpaw's Workshop. Thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. Now let's get started with today's project. Today I went through my scrap bin, picked up a little bit of a 1/4-inch piece of plywood and just a little piece of scrap that's about a 1/2 inch by 3/4. It really doesn't matter how big that it is. And what we're going to do today is make a door sled jig. This jig, you might ask, what is a door sled? It is going to be used to be able to cut off the bottom of the doors, and we're going to be using the circular saw with this jig to be able to cut the bottom of the door with a nice and clean cut, because this is going to create a zero clearance on the doors, and it makes it where it's much safer to do, and it will not mar the finish of the door as you cut it with the circular saw. So let's get started. Alright, with my table saw sled in place, I'm going to go ahead and make these 2 cuts along the marks that I made. So here's the first one. Now that's all the parts that I'm going to need to be able to make this sled. Let's go ahead and get started with the assembly now. Okay, now that we've got our pieces cut, I'm going to measure over on this saw and be able to find out what this measurement is on the base of my circular saw. Your saw, I'm sure, will be different. Mine is 6 1/4 inches. What I'm going to do on my base is measure over at about 7 inches. And the reason I'm going to measure over at 7 inches is after we have this jig assembled, I'm going to use the saw and cut off this edge, creating a zero clearance. It'll also give me my cut point when we put it onto the door, and we'll demonstrate how to be able to do that by cutting off the bottom of the door shortly. Alright, so first thing, let's go ahead and get this assembled. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is measure over my 7 inches and get that marked. And then we're going to use the T-square and draw my line. This is going to be the location that I want to put my board that I cut. So we're going to add some glue to this. Then I'm going to go ahead and stick that on right there. To hold it temporarily, I'm going to use some clamps, because I do want this definitely perpendicular to this top section here. So that's going to be important. Alright, with that now secured at each end, I'm going to flip this over and we're going to shoot in the nails to hold it for just a few minutes while we get the screws set up. Now all I'm doing here is just using a pin nailer to be able to hold it in place until we get the screws. Alright, with that done, now then that is secured in place, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the clamps for now. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, and we'll get the screws put in place. Okay, what I'm going to do is drill some little small pilot holes And there we go. With that done, we'll just go ahead and put the screws in, and that'll complete the back side. And then on to the next piece. Okay, finishing up the last screw, and that will complete everything that we need to do on the bottom side of this jig. Now we're going to flip it over, and what's going to happen is that this piece will attach right underneath here, and that will form my T-square that I need. This part right here, once it's completed, is going to attach to the bottom like that across the bottom of the door to hold it in place. That's the reason that it's on this side instead of up here on top with the other piece. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this one now, and we're going to do it the same way. I'll go ahead and put in a little bit of glue. And just slide that right in place. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use some pin nails just to temporarily hold it. That should be more than enough. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put a couple of screws in here. Now remember, we want to stay back from this edge because we're going to be cutting this edge off, getting it to that zero clearance. So I'm going to put a screw right into this location. And I'm going to put another one on this side. Okay. So I'll be back after that is finished. All right, now that we've got this last screw in place, I'm going to make sure they're nice and tight. That looks good. Perfectly even with my edge. But I still want to check it one last time and make sure that it is nice and square. And that looks real good. Okay, so the next thing, with our jig finished, the only thing we're going to need now is to be able to cut it off with our skill saw. And remember, I said that this was 6 1/4 inches. So what I'm going to do now is measure over the 6 1/4 and put my mark right here. And I'm going to go down to the other end and do the same thing. Put this mark right there, and this is where I'm going to put the masking tape. The masking tape is necessary to be able to keep it from cutting up the edge and making it so fuzzy. There we go, that should do. Because if you take the skill saw, the blade is always cutting up. So as I cut across this blade will be coming up and it'll tear the edge of this plywood. By putting that tape down there, it will help minimize that tear out. So let me go ahead and get this set up. We'll make the first cut. Then I'm going to show you the problem that I have with the door, and we're going to cut the actual door using our brand new door sled jig. Okay, what I'm going to do is just use the end of my workbench to be able to set this up. So I'm going to set that right there in place, nice and secure, and I'm going to use the clamp to be able to hold it in place. Next thing we're going to do is cut right across here to get a nice clean edge and be able to set it for the jig to be used on the actual doors. So let me get my hearing protection on and we'll get started cutting it. Go ahead and remove the tape now. And you can see that there is very minimum tear out on that edge. All right, that completes making the jig. So that is now finished. Okay, this completes making my door sled jig. This will be the end of part 1. Part 2 is going to be where we actually go ahead and use this jig and cut off the bottom of a door. So stay tuned for part 2. Again, thank you for watching and visiting my shop today. And as always, you're welcome. Thank you. Take care.